Southwest United States, Apache Nation. You're on the floor.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters. The Ndee-Nnee Alliance would like to thank Bikawanan, the life giver, and Nigostan, Earth is Woman, for giving us all life and for allowing our indigenous brothers and sisters to be present here within the great land of the Lenape, whom we thank for allowing us to gather in their inherent territory. The Ndee-Nnee Alliance recommends to the UNPFII for future work the areas of herbicide, pesticide, chemical and toxic contamination, paying particular attention to Dow Chemical and Monsanto corporations, the violations of sacred sites by governments and corporations, and the militarization of the U.S.-Mexico border that now inhibits the culture, health, and autonomies of indigenous people, not only in our region, but around the world. While the United States mouths the empty rhetoric of concern about human rights in places around the world like Burma, China, Tibet, and Syria, to name some examples, even furnishing an assessment of human rights to its own State Department, virtually nothing is ever said about the continued and incessant violation of human rights of the original peoples of this land, the indigenous peoples. It's bad enough that of the 370 so-called treaties made between the U.S. government and the indigenous nations from the early colonial settlement in Turtle Island, not one was kept. It is thus relevant that the Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination of the United Nations Human Rights Commission, in its report on March 1st, 2013, has expressed concerns about the failure of the United States to provide a responsive report to the Committee's raising of human rights violations of indigenous peoples due on November 20th, 2011, specifically regarding the following key issues. The construction of a vast security wall on the Texas-Mexico border based on the purported aim of preventing illegal entry of alleged terrorists, undocumented migrants, and drug traffickers into the United States that involved the Department of Homeland Security disregarding 36 federal and state laws in the wall construction, including the National Environmental Policy Act, the American Indian Religious Freedom Act, and the Administrative Act, and were on the lands which the Kickapoo traditional nation of Texas, the Isleta del Sur Pueblo Tigua Nation, and the Lipan and Ndee Apache have lived for time immemorial, are being victimized by wall construction that occurred without consultation of these respective indigenous peoples and have uprooted ecological systems and lands while violating sacred cultural sites integral to these communities and preventing such peoples from gaining access to materials needed for traditional ceremonies. The rights of the Lipan Apache, in particular, warrant serious attention, considering that the nation is unrecognized by the United States government and has no access to courts as revenues for redress. It is also worth noting that the commercial non-indigenous enterprises such as the Riverbend Golf Resort on the Texas-Mexico border were spared any disruption of their property and operations in the wall construction. The impact of the Arizona Snowball Ski Resort in the sacred mountain in northern Arizona, Doocosleet, San Francisco Peaks, on the cultural practices and sacred ceremonies of all indigenous nations of the Southwest, particularly given the ski resort's project plans to pipe sewage water to the mountain with the plan of making snow for skiing. Extractive industries, mainly large-scale mining corporations, since contact was made with Ndee-Nnee, exploit the natural resources within the community's territorial, cultural, and spiritual boundaries, causing harm to the health and welfare of Ndee-Nnee and all peoples. Along with the ongoing fight with the Rio Tinto Zinc and BHP Billiton, whom both create a subsidiary company called Resolution Copper Company, and Ndee-Nnee over the Southeast Arizona Land Exchange and Conservation Act of 2013. This bill was introduced into the United States House of Representatives in February of 2013 without the free, prior, informed consent of Ndee-Nnee. The area Resolution Copper wants to mine copper ore is a holy place for Ndee-Nnee and other indigenous peoples in the southwest United States and northern Mexico. The site also maintains historical significance in the annals of time through oral history and the spirit within the Ndee-Nnee, but also within the colonized history of Arizona, United States, Mexican, and Spanish histories as well. Not only culture is at stake here, water is as well. In a territory that is known for its desert dry lands and seasons of drought, our sacred and precious water for our thirsty peoples will be depleted for the wealth of kingdoms, nations, governments, and corporations, disguised as capitalism and free market societies that continue to promote and self-imposed adverse health effects, especially the polluted air from the mine smelter that Ndee-Nnee breathe in daily, which is known to affect the thyroid in human beings. These are repeated attempts by state There are repeated attempts by state and federal legislatures to disturb indigenous peoples' ancestral lands by opening them to transfer for multinational extractive mining and energy corporations and commercial developers. It is germane to add that the rights of the Ndee Nation in St. Carlos, Arizona, were and are being expressly violated with the introduction of a spraying of 12 major herbicides, which is Agent Orange, before the military conquest in Vietnam, at the rate of 9,000 acres per year in the Coconino, Kaibab, and Prescott and Tonto forests. It is also disturbing to note that the members of the indigenous Tohono O'odham Nation, whose lands span the Arizona-Mexico border, continue to experience harassment, intimidation, and terror by U.S. border authorities as they cross the border to participate in ancestral ceremonies due to the presence of an electrified wall and the violation of sacred sites by state agencies like the U.S. Border Patrol. The genocide of indigenous peoples began in the first invasion by European pirates under the leadership of Columbus in the 15th century, starting in the Caribbean, followed by South and Central America, and then in the 17th century, Turtle Island. While the United States has created a vast capitalist and globalized empire that has made trillions of dollars in wealth over 4.5 centuries, few in the world recognize that these lascivious and insatiable greed for land, minerals, and wealth that resulted in the wealthiest economic and military power in the world actually entailed the enslavement of African people and the systematic genocide of indigenous peoples on these lands. It is time for the world bodies of justice like the United Nations Human Rights Commission and the World Court to demand that the U.S. desist from its ongoing genocidal actions in violation of international human rights law, and that it restore indigenous peoples' lands and sovereignty unconditionally in the interest of global justice, peace, and harmony. The United States can no longer be shielded from the scrutiny in its obsessive pursuit of resources for capitalist industrialism through perpetual genocide and war in all continents of the world, making it the leading outlaw nation in the world.